Oh, hello. Since cats seem to be much more intelligent than a lot of people, definitely Shmuel, so we'd like to recommend a book to read for those of you who don't know what genocide is and you need to look it up in Google, and even then you don't really understand what genocide means. Here is an example from a genocide that's not been recognized by a lot of countries but should, which is the genocide of the Armenian people. So I'd like to recommend Franz Werfel's 40 Days of Musa Dag. And let me tell you about this book. So Franz Werfel, he is a Jewish writer and poet, born in 1890 in Prague, Czech Republic, and when he was 18, he already published his first his first poem in Vienna, in a Austrian paper. In 1911, he published in Berlin his first poetry collection. First World War, he served as a soldier in the German army and even fought in the Russian front. Afterwards, he settled in Vienna. In the 20s, he traveled to the world and visited also the land of Israel. With Austria being conquered in 1940 by the Nazis, he escaped to France. And from there, after many difficulties, he got to the United States. In 1945, he died in Beverly Hills, California. So this is, he wrote a lot of books in poetry, but this book has been translated into Hebrew in 1934. Anyway, what does it talk about? This book will teach you about genocide that hasn't been recognized by a lot of countries that took place by the Turks, the Turkish people, not the Turkish, but the Turkish army, slaughtered Armenians. And what does it mean, a genocide? That they slaughtered them. They murdered them by the masses, while the Armenians did not do anything except exist as a separate entity. They have a different religion than the Turkish people. And still today, the wonderful enlightened leader of Turkey is from time to time attacking Kurdish people. Armenians are not that many anymore. There are very few Armenians left in the world. Armenia is a very small country. So this is a very important book that describes a very important chapter in the Armenian people, the horrible struggle of those who were stuck. They were in Musa Dag, and how they were massacred. So he said that he wanted to write about it when he visited Damascus, and then he saw the refuge children in 1929. Yes, there were refugees, children. There were refugees with handicapped, and they were starving in Damascus. And then he got the idea, and he had the motivation to speak about the very difficult, horrible fate of the Armenian people. So he researched it, and it's greatly based on facts. And yeah, so to be honest, I don't know enough history. I'm not in his. I don't claim to know history too much. Like this, I don't know much about history. Don't know much about geography, but I do know that it's a book I would teach, and I wonder if they teach it at American universities in Columbia specifically. Before you scream out genocide, do read about the genocide of the Armenian people by Franz Werfel's The 40 Days of Musa Dag. I just started to read it. It's a beautiful novel. A lot of details is very typical of the time. And you can really learn a lot about history and what a genocide means and what it's like to be a small people threatened by another, like there was the Ottoman Empire. They were ruling all over the Middle East and more. And during World War One, they lost the war, the Turks, and this leads us to what's happening today. The British took over, but before the British took over, the Turkish army managed to slaughter around 1 million Armenian people. 1 million, and this is a small, tiny nation. It's not 1.2 billion Arabs. No, no, no. It's a small, tiny nation. It is a minority among the Muslims. I find it very odd that anyone at a university should accuse a tiny, tiny minority, which is 0.001% of the population of the world, of being a threat to people that are 20% of the population of the world. Especially since they are the 20% of these people are in 99.9% of the Middle East, and they feel like people that are 0.001% of the population and have 0.00001% of the Middle East are conquerors, and threatening their existence of 1.2 billion Arabs, Muslims in the world, when there's only 14 million Jews in the world, half of them in Israel, half of them in the US, now threatened at the universities even. So do read the book by Franz Werfel, and do tell me one Arab Palestinian writer who wrote about the plight of any other people but their own, and how much do they care about anybody but themselves, and where do they take responsibility for all the slavery, the atrocities of Arab slave traders that are also described, by the way, by famous writers. I read a little bit about I think it was Joseph Conrad or someone that was shocked, horrified by the Arab slave traders, and he was describing it in his books. And then I want to know, when did an Arab writer, poet, write about somebody else's pain, somebody else's plight, somebody else's pain and suffering? And because that means empathy. So we have Franz Werfel, an amazing writer, classic book that everybody should read. And then let's have a discussion about genocide. After you read about the genocide of the Armenian people by the Turkish army, then let's talk about what genocide means. Does it mean that the number of people increases, as we know the Palestinians, or does it mean the number decreases? Does it mean that people stay in the territory or leave the territory? Does it mean that the people are peaceful, like the Armenians were, or are they vicious terrorists that threaten the lives of their neighbor, even those who, anyway. Right, Sheep? Sam, you recommend that book? Sam? Well, he's busy guarding his home. Anyway, so do read that book. Tonight starts Holocaust Memorial Day, and it's a good book to read.